For this project, I'm gonna need the Yarn Bee Soft and Sleek Low Peel Fiber yarn in the color French Lilac. And then on the same brand and the same name in the color Berry Mix. And then I'm going to use my 4.5 millimeter hook and just something to cut my thread. Okay, this project is gonna be a better version, I hope, of this video that I posted a couple years ago. And yeah, this time around I'm using lighter colors and a better angle, let's hope. Okay, so to begin, I'm gonna start from the top to the bottom. So I'm gonna start with the messy bun part first. I'm gonna chain 20, and I'm gonna start with the purple, with the lilac color. I got this journal Hobby Lobby. I don't know if I said that. Okay, so I'm gonna chain 20, make my slip knot. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I have my 20 chains. If this is gonna be where the messy bun is gonna start. So if you have a lot of hair, I will add maybe three more stitches or more. That depends on you. But I'm gonna do 20. And then just careful to not twist our chain. And we're gonna insert the hook on the first chain that we did. And then we're gonna slip stitch so we can join the two ends together. Okay. Okay, so now for the row 1, we're gonna single crochet 24 in the ring, and that's gonna be our first row. And as I'm doing the single crochets, I'm gonna like hold with my finger the tail so I can sew it together with everything, so I don't have my tail just hanging in there. Okay, so I'm gonna start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, okay, so I finished the 24 single crochet. If I forgot to say, if you add more chains to your project, I will add 2 or 3 more single crochets, only if you did more than 20 chains. Okay, so once I'm done with that, I'm gonna go to the first single crochet, and then I'm gonna slip stitch, and I have my ring right here. Okay, so now for round 2, we're gonna chain 2, and then we're gonna do we're gonna do a B cluster on the same space where we did the 2 chains. Okay, so to do that, I'm gonna double crochet on the same space, but we're not gonna finish the stitch. So we insert our hook, we have 3 loops, we turn over, pull it through 2, and then we have 2. So we turn over, insert our hook again, and then we have 4. Then we pull it through 2, and then turn over, and we pull it through all 3. So that chain that we did at the beginning, that doesn't count as a stitch. So we have the first, and then we chain 1, and then in the same space we're gonna repeat the same thing. So we have 3, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, insert again, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, pass through all 3, and there's our B cluster. Okay, so after we're done the first, we're gonna skip the next stitch, and then we go to the next one, and then we do another V cluster again. We turn over, we skip 1 stitch, and then in the next one we insert, turn over, pass it through 2, turn over, insert again, grab, turn over, pass it through 2, turn over, pass it through all 3, and then we chain 1, then again turn over, insert the hook, grab the yarn, we have 3 loops, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, insert the hook, grab, we have 4 loops, turn over, pass through 2, we have 3, turn over, pass through all 3, and there's our second cluster. So we're gonna repeat that all the way around. We're gonna skip this one, and then in the next stitch we're gonna do a V cluster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I come back once I'm done with my round. Okay, so I just finished the round, and this is what we have. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm going to slip stitch on the top of the 2 chain that we did at the beginning. Slip stitch like so. Okay, now we're gonna change colors, and to do that I am going to put this yarn that I'm using to the side. I'm gonna grab my new color, I have my new color. Okay, so we're gonna slip stitch in the middle of the first cluster we did. So I'm gonna insert my hook over there, I'm gonna grab my yarn, and then I'm going to grab my yarn from behind, pass it, and then pass it through the hole, and then pass it through the old yarn that I had. With my finger I'm kind of gonna tie the yarn that I used for the first row, and then I'm gonna grab it with my fingers just so it doesn't get loose. I'm gonna grab my new yarn, and I'm gonna chain 2. Okay, so now again I'm gonna grab my tail, and I'm gonna hide it as I go. Now these 2 chains are gonna count as it's gonna count as a first stitch. So to make so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a cluster in the first cluster. Okay, so since I already have this and it's gonna count as my first stitch, I'm just gonna go ahead and make a normal double crochet. So, and then I'm gonna chain one, and then I'm gonna make the other part of the cluster. So I'm gonna turn over, insert my hook, grab the yarn. I have 3 loops, turn over, pass it through 2. I have 2 loops, turn over, insert my hook again, grab the yarn. I have 4 loops, turn over, pass it through 2. I have 3, turn over, pass it through all 3, and there's our first cluster. Okay. Now we're gonna jump to the next cluster, to the middle of the cluster. So I'm just gonna leave my tail to the side. Okay, so I'm gonna go to my cluster. I'm gonna turn over, go to the middle of the cluster, and make another cluster. So again, turn over, insert my hook, grab that yarn, have 3 loops, turn over, pass it to 2, turn over, insert my hook again, grab, I have 4 loops, turn over, pass it through 2, turn over, pass it through all 3. And then I have the first part of the cluster. So now we chain 1, turn over, insert the hook in the same space, grab, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, insert, grab, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, pass through all 3, and there's my second cluster. So we're gonna repeat that all the way around. We're just gonna do clusters in the middle of the previous clusters, and that's gonna be our third round. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I come back when I finish my round. Okay, I just finished round 3, and this is what I have. So for round 4, we're gonna increase. So first we're gonna close the round. So I'm gonna go in top of the first chains that I did, in top of the chain, and close it. And then I'm gonna pass my yarn to the side. And then, as you remember, I didn't cut this purple, so I just grab it. And then I'm gonna go to the next, to the cluster, in the middle of the cluster, insert my hook, grab the purple yarn, or the yarn that you chose, and slip stitch. Okay, and then we chain 2, and from now on this chain 2 is gonna count as our first stitch. Okay, so now we're gonna make a cluster in here. So since I have my chain, I'm gonna make a normal double crochet, chain 1, and then make the other part of the cluster. I don't finish my double crochet, turn over, insert the hook, and pass through 2, and then pass through all 3. So I have my first cluster. So now I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna increase. So instead of skip to the next cluster, I'm gonna make a cluster between the previous 2 clusters. So I made a cluster in top of the previous cluster space, and then my next cluster. So I'm gonna make a cluster in this space right here. So we go ahead and do that cluster. Okay, and then we go to our next cluster and we're gonna make a cluster in top of it. So we turn over, insert, turn over, pass through 2, turn over, pass through 3, chain 1, insert, pass through 2, insert, pass through 2, turn over, pass through 3. Okay, now we are going to skip this stitch and then we jump to the next cluster. So we make the cluster, chain 1, and we finish the V cluster. Okay, so now I'm gonna go back to repeat what we did. So we slip stitch, we changed the color, we chain 2, and then we did another double crochet to complete the first part of our cluster, chain 1, and then make the other part of the cluster. We made a cluster between clusters, and then we made a cluster in the previous cluster, and then we skipped the next space and we jumped to the next cluster and we made a cluster on top of it. So we're gonna repeat that all the way around. Okay, so now we're gonna make a cluster between clusters, which is this space right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. Chain 1, finish the other part of the cluster. Okay, and then we go to the next cluster and we're gonna make a cluster in top of it, in the middle of it. Chain 1. And then we finish the other part. And then we finish the other part of the cluster. Okay, and then now we're going to skip this space and then we're gonna go to the next cluster and make a cluster. And that's basically what we're gonna repeat all the way around until we're done with a round. That's round 4. Go over it again. So we started with a chain 2 and then we did a double crochet to finish the first part of the cluster, and then we did a cluster between clusters. So here's my first cluster and this is my second one. We did a cluster between them, and then we did a cluster in top of the previous cluster, and then we skipped the space, and then we did a cluster in top of the previous cluster, and then we did a cluster between clusters in the space, and then we jumped to the next stitch, to the next cluster, and made another cluster on top of it, and then we skip the next space, and then we did a cluster on top of our cluster. So we're gonna repeat that all the way around until we get to the end. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that and then I'll be right back. Just done with my round before, and I'm gonna slip stitch on top of the chain that I did. Okay, now I'm gonna pass my yarn to the other side, and then I'm gonna go to the next cluster, the space, and I'm gonna change colors. So I'm gonna grab my other yarn, gonna grab it, and I'm gonna slip stitch, and I'm going to chain 2, and then like I said, this counts as our first stitch, so we just need to make a normal double crochet to finish the first part of the cluster. Chain 1, and then we finish the cluster. Okay, and then now we're gonna jump to the next cluster, and we're gonna make a cluster in top of it. Chain 1, finish the cluster. Okay, so I just finished the round 5, and then to close it out, I'm gonna slip stitch in top of the chain that I did at the beginning of the round. We're gonna change colors, so I'm gonna put this to the side, but at the same time holding it with my finger. Gonna grab the other color, and then I'm gonna insert my hook in the middle of the space of the next cluster, grab my yarn and slip stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm gonna make a single crochet in the same space to finish the first part of the cluster. Chain 1, same space, and finish the cluster. Okay, and then I'm gonna make a cluster in top of the next cluster. Chain 1, finish the cluster. Okay, then I'm gonna go to the next cluster, and I'm gonna make a cluster. Okay, and then we're gonna increase again on this round. So I'm gonna make a cluster between clusters. So here is the cluster where I just made one cluster, the space, and then here's my other cluster. So I'm gonna make a cluster between them. Chain 1, finish the cluster. Okay, so I made 3 clusters, and then I made a cluster between clusters, and then now I'm gonna do a cluster in top of the next cluster. Okay, and then I'm gonna do another cluster in top of the next cluster. and then I'm gonna do another cluster on top of the next cluster. Okay, so I did 3 clusters, and then I'm gonna increase again. So I'm gonna make a cluster between clusters. Okay, so I'm gonna back up for a little bit. So we started with a chain 2. We did a double crochet so we could finish the first part of the cluster. We chained 1, finished the cluster, and then did another cluster in top of the cluster in top of the next cluster. So we did 3 clusters in top of the previous clusters, and then we increased, so we did a cluster between the clusters, and then we did a cluster in top of the next 3 clusters, and now we increase, so we're gonna do another cluster between clusters. Okay, so there's my another increase, and that's what we're gonna repeat all the way until we get to the end. We're gonna do 3 clusters in top of the previous 3 clusters, and then we're gonna increase between clusters, and then we do another 3 clusters in top of the 3 previous clusters, and then we increase between clusters, and then we cluster in top of the next previous clusters 1 2 3, and then we increase between clusters, and then we cluster in top of the next 3 clusters, and then we're gonna finish up the round with the increase. So we're gonna increase between our last cluster and our first cluster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I come back. Okay, so I just finished the round 5, and then to close it out, I'm gonna slip stitch in top of the chain that I did at the beginning of the round. We're gonna change colors. So I'm gonna put this to the side, but at the same time holding it with my finger. Gonna grab the other color, and then I'm gonna insert my hook in the middle of the space of the next cluster, grab my yarn and slip stitch. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm gonna make a single crochet in the same space to finish the first part of the cluster. Chain 1, same space, and finish the cluster. Okay, and then I'm gonna make a cluster in top of the next cluster. Chain 1, finish the cluster. Okay, then I'm gonna go to the next cluster, and I'm gonna make a cluster. Okay, and then we're gonna increase again on this round. So I'm gonna make a cluster between clusters. So here is the cluster where I just made one cluster. the space, and then here's my other cluster. So I'm gonna make a cluster between them. Chain one, finish the cluster. Okay, so I made 3 clusters, and then I made a cluster between clusters, and then now I'm gonna do a cluster in top of the next cluster. Okay, and then I'm gonna do another cluster in top of the next cluster. And then I'm gonna do another cluster on top of the next cluster. Okay, so I did 3 clusters, and then I'm gonna increase again. So I'm gonna make a cluster between clusters. Okay, so I'm gonna back up for a little bit. So we started with a chain 2. We did a double crochet so we could finish the first part of the cluster. We chained 1, finished the cluster, and then did another cluster in top of the cluster in top of the next cluster. So we did 3 clusters in top of the previous clusters, and then we increased, so we did a cluster between the clusters, and then we did a cluster in top of the next 3 clusters, and now we increase, so we're gonna do another cluster between clusters. Okay, so there's my another increase, and that's what we're gonna repeat all the way until we get to the end. We're gonna do 3 clusters in top of the previous 3 clusters, and then we're gonna increase between clusters, and then we do another 3 clusters in top of the 3 previous clusters, and then we increase between clusters, and then we cluster in top of the next previous clusters 1 2 3, and then we increase between clusters, and then we cluster in top of the next 3 clusters, and then we're gonna finish up the round with the increase. So we're gonna increase between our last cluster and our first cluster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then I come back. Okay, so I just finished the round 6, and I just did the last increasing of the round. So I'm gonna close it off with a slip stitch. So I'm gonna go to the first chain that I did. Okay, and then we're gonna change colors again. So I'm gonna grab my other color, go to the first cluster, go to the space, grab the new yarn and slip stitch, and chain 2, and then we're gonna do another double crochet to finish the first part of the cluster. Chain 1, same space, and then we finish the second part of the cluster. And then for this round we're done increasing, so now this round we're just gonna do clusters in top of previous clusters. And that's basically it for this round. Just making my clusters in top of clusters, and that's for round 7. So go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I just finished round 7, and I'm gonna finish it up with a slip stitch on top of the sheen that I did at the beginning. For round 8, we're gonna repeat what we did on the 7. We're just gonna do clusters in top of clusters, and then we're gonna change our color, of course. And then for round 9 is the same. We're gonna repeat round 8 and 7, but with a new color. So okay, I'm gonna finish up round 7, and then I'm gonna grab my color, go to the next cluster, going on the space, grab my yarn and slip stitch, chain 2, make a double crochet to finish the first part of the cluster, chain 1, finish the second part of the cluster, and then I'm gonna repeat that all the way around. Make clusters over clusters, and once I get to the end, I'm gonna finish up with slip stitch on top of the chain. I'm gonna change my color, and then I'm going to repeat the same thing, cluster over cluster with a new color. And so yeah, we're gonna repeat those two rounds, around 8 and 9, just like we did number 7 right here. Let's go ahead and do that, and I meet you back here. Okay, I just finished the round 9, and this is what I have so far. Okay, so I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When I got these two colors, I thought it was gonna be the perfect combination, and I was like, oh yeah, this is gonna be so cute. But now I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I mean, the pattern is fine, right? But the color combination, I don't know. I mean, you never know. Once it's done, it's probably gonna look better. But as right now, I'm kind of regretting my color choices. But okay, continuing with the pattern, I finished round 9, and then I'm gonna repeat the same thing. Gonna finish it up with a slip stitch on top of the chain, and then we're gonna change colors, and we are actually gonna repeat what we did on the round 7, round 8, and this last one, round 9, for 2 more rows. So for round 10, I'm gonna do another round of clusters in top of clusters with my other yarn, and then round 11, we're gonna make another round with clusters in top of clusters with the other color. Okay, so round 10, slip stitch in the middle of the previous cluster with new yarn. Oop. Chain 2, chain 2. Okay, and then we finish up half of the cluster, chain 1, and we finish the other half of the cluster. So yeah, I'm gonna keep doing the cluster on top of cluster for this round. I'm gonna finish up with the slip stitch on top of my chain, change colors, and then do round 11 the same clusters on top of clusters. And yeah, I meet you back here once we're done with those two. Okay, I just finished round 11, and just like I have been doing in the other rounds, I'm just gonna finish it up with a slip stitch on top of the first chain that I did. Okay, so now we won't need this color anymore. We're just gonna use the first color that we started using for the brim of our hat. So I'm gonna cut it, and I'm gonna leave a kind of long tail, and then I can just get this one away, take this one away. Okay, so now just so this one, just to secure this one, I'm just gonna make a knot. There you go. Okay, I'm gonna chain 2, and then on this round I'm just gonna make double crochets. So that's gonna be my first one. Then I'm gonna go to the next stitch, and I'm gonna double crochet there. I'm gonna double crochet in the middle of the cluster, and then I'm gonna double crochet on the next stitch. And then I'm gonna double crochet on the next stitch, which is the middle of the clusters, and then next stitch, and then next stitch, and so on, so on. We're just gonna double crochet in every single stitch that we have, and that is going to be around 12. Just double crochet all the way around. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll be right back once I'm done. Okay, I just finished round 12, and this is what we have. So this is what we have right now. So now for round 11, we're gonna do front and back loop stitch. For round 12, we're gonna do front and back post stitch. So, and to do that, I'm gonna finish this round off with slip stitch. I'm gonna chain 2, and then I'm gonna turn over, and then on my next stitch I'm gonna insert my hook and kind of hug it from behind like so, grab my yarn and make a double crochet. So that's my first front post. Again, and then for the next stitch I'm gonna turn over, I'm gonna go behind the stitch, I'm gonna insert my hook and kind of hug it, but like in reverse, and then grab the join and make a double crochet. That is my back post. Okay, I'm gonna do it again. So the next stitch is a front post, so I'm gonna turn over, insert my hook between stitches, kind of hug it from the back like so, grab the join and make a double crochet. Okay, next stitch is a back post, so I'm gonna turn over, going behind the stitch, like behind stitches, so behind it, and kind of push it out, grab my yarn and make a double crochet. So that's what we're gonna do for this round. Front post, back post, front post, back post. We're gonna do that all the way around until we get here. So yeah, let me go ahead and do that, and then I meet you back here. Okay, I just finished round 13, and just like I've been doing in every at the end of every round, just gonna slip stitch on the first on the chain that I did. Okay, now this is what we have so far, and that's 13 rounds. So now for the 14th round, we're basically just gonna repeat what we did. We're gonna chain 2, and then our previous round is gonna tell us what we're doing next. So we see that after we chained our next one, it was a front post, so we're gonna make a front post there like so, and then on the next stitch you can see it's a back post, so we're gonna do a back post, and we're just gonna do that all the way around for round 14, which is this one, and then we're gonna repeat the same thing for round 15. Okay, so I just finished round 14. I just wanted to update you, and I also wanted to say, which I should have said this at the beginning of the project, but you can adjust this as you like. So like I said, I'm gonna do 15 rows in total, but if to you that's too long, you can do less of these ones or less of the brim rounds. Or if it's too short, you can just more of the brim. That is completely up to you. So yeah, but for mine, I'm gonna do the 15th. I mean the 15 rounds. And yeah, so like I said, I just finished the 14th, so I'm gonna do my 15th and last. So I am going to do that, and then I'll be right back so we can finish up the project and show you how it looks like. Okay, I just finished my round 15, and so this is my brim. Okay, sorry, it wasn't focusing. This is my brim. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cut. Okay, so I cut, I'm gonna go to my first, to my chain, and then I'm going to slip stitch, And then I'm gonna grab my tail, just pass it through, and just pull. And then with my with a needle or with your own crochet hook, just go through the stitches and just hide your tail. You can hide them on like on this edge, or you can just kind of like hide them through here. That is completely up to you. So I'm just gonna hide mine on the edge, and then I'm gonna cut the rest of it, and then I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna flip it for a minute so I can go back to these parts right here. So here where we finished with the last one, with the last time that we changed colors, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna grab my hook, and then I'm just going to hide the tail. And then the same thing with this top one right here. Yeah, so let's make sure that we hide our tails. We don't want any tails just hanging in there. Okay, so now I'm gonna flip it again, the right side, and here's the Messy Van hat. Let's see if I can give you a better shot. Okay, so here it is. Looking at it now, yeah, the colors are not like my favorites, but it doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look yeah, it doesn't look bad at all. Right now, I don't know if you can tell, they're purple. To me on the screen looks like kind of brownish, but it's probably just me. Anyway, so yeah, so this is the finished project. And the nice thing about this pattern is that you really cannot tell where, like, every time that we finish the round, you cannot even tell where it is, right? Sometimes some of the crochet projects has like a weird like line that tells you where you joined the rounds. This one doesn't. Okay, so yeah, so this is the end of the video. Excuse the noise, that's my little mama is over there. So yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot what I was saying. Yeah, so this is the end of the video. I'm gonna insert a photo or a video of me wearing it. So yeah, I hope this was easy to follow, and I hope you liked it, you enjoyed it, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you, excuse me, little missy, subscribe if you haven't, and yeah, I see you next time. Thank you for watching.